Well, here we are for the final phase of phase one of Artists Highlighted. Yes, that is correct. And the absolute truth is, I've been a little bit of afraid to make this particular one. Um, I think before we start anything, as much as maybe all of you know that have watched this, maybe some of you who don't, I think for you to understand more or less what this particular artist means to me, we have to go back. We have to go back a ways before I even started this channel. So, when I was growing up, I grew up in a household that had a lot of rock and metal. My dad is really into Led Zeppelin, and he really likes Boston. He really likes Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Deep Purple, all the classics that kind of all led up to what we know now as metal. Then my brothers came along, and I have a lot of them. Anyway, they would intensify and build upon what my dad had listened to. So they were into the big four and Pantera, stuff like that. So Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer to an extent, but Metallica, Megadeth, and they were really, really into that stuff. And I remember, weirdly enough, this will all tie together. I remember the next big phase of music that we had in my house. Obviously, Blink-182 was really, really big. But the next big one after that was Linkin Park. And I remember thinking to myself, man, this is crazy to hear how music has evolved. That's around the time where I started getting into music. And for those of you who know, like, I grew up with a lot of metal, but also a lot of emo music. And so I went down a really weird route with music, and I know that I did. Between, Avenged Sevenfold, Cradle of Filth, Behemoth, really some dark and obscure black metal. But then I was also into groups like My Chemical Romance, and I was really into Avenged Sevenfold. Waken the Fallen was one of my favorite albums, and it's weird to see it because, they were very emo at that time. So the interesting thing is that after that, I kind of started getting into more what people call like dad rock or butt rock at the same time, which is funny because it's groups like Seether and My Chemical Romance. But I was kind of in my feels, and when I came out of that, that's when I went kind of down a really, really hardcore metal roll. Groups like Cannibal Corpse, Napalm Death, and the list goes on into that same kind of atmosphere, Dimmu Borgir, and that's for some reason where I got really latched onto. I mean, Cradle of Filth and Behemoth is also pretty heavy, Lamb of God, things like that. And the interesting thing is that even when that was the main source of the music that I was listening to, there was something else underlying behind all that. And that was for something that was called power metal. For those of you who don't know, that would be groups like Dragon Force, Twilight Force. Some people, just the really high soaring vocalists. I remember Queensryche was really big, even though they're not really power metal. Obviously, we have groups like Blind Guardian and Stradivarius that I listen to endlessly as well. And the interesting thing was that was kind of like my guilty pleasure because it was always never really popular to admit that you like power metal, because it was basically Dungeons and Dragons if it was music. So it got kind of picked on a lot. So anyway, how does this tie into where I take this video now? Well, I've been really trying to study what it is that really drew me in. My very first song on the entire channel was EXO's Wolf. And that was when I realized that absolutely being dropped in on the deep end of the pool was the right idea. And after that, I did a couple other songs. Mama. We did Growl and Thunder and Tempo. And then it hit the day that something stuck out to me. A vocal kept soaring above all of them. In Miracle in December, I noticed Baekhyun. And in a weird sense, it felt like I was rediscovering something like Iron Maiden for the first time. And I always give people nicknames on here. And funny enough, while writing this, I came across the idea of calling Baekhyun my Siren of K-pop. There was, for the first time, someone that I found, even though it was early on, someone that I felt like rivaled a lot of those people that were in power metal, that were making those crazy high vocals with the crazy vibrato and just crazy leaps and bounds vocally speaking that I loved. And I knew that I had to go and study who this was. And I was recommended 2 songs. First and foremost, Bambi and Amusement Park. And that sent me down a spiral. A huge spiral. And that is where we are going to take this next spot. I went through and I tried to find everything that I felt like I could to try and understand this man vocally because I was so drawn in. Then, one late night, as I was going through the rabbit hole, I ran into this.
나 찾아줄까 그님이 아니올까 기다리는 마음 허무해라 그토록 믿어왔던 그 사람 돌아설 줄이야 예전에는 몰랐었네 진정 난 몰랐네
It was at this moment that when I had been listening to the songs that I had, I tried to make sure that I kept as much under what I saw on the channel as like seeing it for the first time. But I was so curious about this, and I remember clicking in on it, and I remember thinking to myself, it's been so long since I heard that kind of emotion while someone was singing. And the interesting thing is that I knew that I was kind of a little bit coming out of my ways of metal when I started getting into that more power and folk metal stuff. And then I remember getting really, really into things like Mumford and Sons and just listening to the lyrics. And I just remember thinking to myself, I wish that I could find something that had the vocals of power metal, but then like the emotion of Mumford and Sons. And then literally I found this. And it was insanity. And so at this time, obviously, this is when I kind of noticed that there was also Chen. And I realized there was something special about doing something with EXO. And I remember feeling so much like I wanted to get to know him more. So I did do the cardinal sin of a reactor, and I went and found a bunch of songs that no one had recommended me or anything like that. And I remember just being so enamored with it all. And I ran to this song next. thought to myself, all of the negative thoughts that I ever had about any preconceived notion that I had about K-pop was wrong. And I think the interesting thing is that after that has happened, that I just realized that the reason why the sudden change of heart was definitely because of finding someone that I could really latch on to. I don't make any qualms in saying that Baekhyun was my first and is one of my highest biases. And as a multi-stan, I know that I have a lot, but this is one that really, really hits home. And the interesting thing is, as I was writing this, one of the things that I was worried about was just thinking about all the emotions. I think the interesting thing is realizing at what I was missing out on music. And it took Baekhyun to kind of make me realize that there was something missing. There was a spirit, there was an emotion that had yet to have been discovered or scratched in a long time. And I think that we'll just move to the next song. And I think it was this song that led me to finally say, maybe out of everything that I've heard, I can consider myself an EXO. And there's a lot of times where, and even still, I actually don't really like to proclaim to be part of a certain fandom. But, and maybe I'll kind of expand on that. This, to me, was probably the closest that I have ever gotten. And in a lot of senses, I feel very much like I'm part of that community still. And this was because of the gateway that was there, that was presented to me. And this was probably the first time that I realized, yeah, this is where I want to be.
보이지 않는 널 찾으려고 애쓰다 들리지 않는 널 들으려 애쓰다 보이지 않던 게 보이고 들리지 않던 게 들려 너 나를 떠난 뒤로 내겐 없던 힘이 생겼어 늘 나밖에 몰랐었던 이기적인 내가 yeah. 네 맘도 몰라줬던 무심한 내가 이렇게도 달라졌다는 게 나조차 믿기지 않아 네 사랑은 이렇게 계속 날 움직여 난 생각만 하면 세상은 너로 채울 수 있어 넌 송이 하나가 네 눈물 한 방울이니까 단 한 가지 못하는 것은 널 내게로 오게 하는 일 이 초라한 초능력 이젠 없었으면 좋겠어 늘 나밖에 몰랐었던 이기적인 내가 네 맘도 몰라줬던 무심한 내가 너는 이렇게 계속 날 움직여 시간을 멈춰 내게 돌아가 추억의 책에 너의 페이지를 열어 난 그 안에 있어 너와 함께 있는 건 아주 조그맣고 약한 사람이 너의 사랑이 이렇게 모든 것 내 삶을 모두 바꾼 것 세상을 모두 사랑이 고마운 줄 몰랐었던 내가 끝나면 그만인 줄 알았던 내가 너 원했던 그 모습 그대로 날마다 나를 고쳐가 내 사랑은 끝없이 계속될 것 같아 시간을 멈춰 이제 난 내게 돌아가 추억의 책을 오늘도 너의 페이지를 열어 난 그 안에 있어 그 겨울에 와 있는 건 보이지 않는 널 찾으려고 애쓰다 들리지 않는 널 들으려 애쓰다
This little side note actually ended up being the very first song that I ever showed my parents anything from K-pop. If you don't know my mom, she is a classically trained, and she was incredible. Actually, is still actually really incredible at singing. In fact, a lot of times she helps me train. And I remember the first time I put this on for them, I was just like, what are you guys thinking? And I just remember them saying, like, that was incredible. And I thought, yeah, it is. And then, you know, there's a term in English that's used that's FOMO, fear of missing out. Well, I think this might have been the first time where I could say that I was experiencing POMO, which was the pain of having missed out. And I just remember thinking to myself, I don't want to ever not have that ever again. And I remember being so excited because I was able to have my first comeback with EXO, which was Exist with Cream Soda. And it was such a cool moment because of this one guy. It let me rediscover music and knock down some walls that I definitely had up. And I just remember thinking to myself that there was no way that I did not miss out. Of course, now it is here and I can experience it retroactively. I think the interesting thing is because of this, I've been able to talk with a lot of people and they're just like, oh yeah, you should have been there. It was awesome. And I thought to myself, yeah, I bet it was. And I think the most important part about all of this is just remembering that it takes one. And for me, it was Baekhyun. Now, I understand that this might be a little bit different from the other videos that I've done about artists highlighted, but I think the thing that needs to be understood about music and musicians is that when I was discussing the video of Min Yoongi, I wanted to highlight the fact that I loved the lyricism of writing the difficult things. And then with Pablo, I wanted to show that the effects of a good, honest, faithful leader. And with Baekhyun, I want to really emphasize the emotional part. Because, in a sense, it's changed everything. I mean, if it wasn't for him, I would have never discovered Dreamcatcher. If it was never for him, I would have never experienced any of this awesome music, including everything from EXO that I have. I spent an entire month of only listening to EXO's music. You know, I did a 1 week club. The only group that I've ever done a 1 month club for was EXO, and honestly, I think out of respect for EXO, it's probably going to remain that way. I think that when you realize the performer and the ability that he is and was and has really, really affected me in a very profound way, differently from the ways that I've been affected by some of the other artists. I mean, I say this a lot, but it's true. I had a very, very poor outlook of what K-pop actually was. In fact, the person who inspired me to even look at anything from EXO, the whole reason behind this, I was talking to her just the other day, and I thought to myself, wow, it's kind of gotten to the point now where for a long minute there, I was probably more into K-pop than she was. And I think the crazy thing is that I don't think that it's ever been stated at the fact that because of that, I've been able to experience so much new stuff. And in a sense, rediscover a whole new love for music. And it's all because of one man. If I'm being honest, he will always be my Siren. He'll always be my Siren. Let's be real. You don't need me to tell you how good of a singer he is. I don't need to tell you about his octaves. I don't need to tell you about any of those things that you already know. The idea behind this whole series was to tell you the one thing that I know that you don't know, and that is the effect that someone like Baekhyun has had on my life. It's given me in a lot of ways, a whole new lease. So, anyway, like I said, maybe a little bit different for artists highlighted than what is normally intended, but I think that this is what's most necessary. And honestly, the story that I wanted to tell. Anyway, thank you all so much. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and my feelings towards Baekhyun, and how in a sense he kind of saved me in a lot of ways. Me and my music. Yeah. We'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.